Hi, Aaron. How are you?
I'm doing great, and thank you so much for having me and inviting me to the show. I appreciate you reaching out and connecting. Glad to be here.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big reader, and when I say reader, I do
Yeah,
air quotes because most of the reading that I do is audiobooks.
yeah, I'm the
Um,
same way. So you don't have to be ashamed of that. I love audiobooks.
so it's been a while since I picked up an actual physical book.
Yeah,
But when I came across your book, I was like, wow, this book is great. So I definitely wanted to make sure that I do read it.
thank you.
But yeah, as a sales reps, we spend a lot of time traveling on the road, going
Sure.
from model to model. So it always helps when you have something listening to an
Yeah.
audio. So is that something you thought about for your book in the future?
Yeah, it's as we're speaking now, this book is brand new. My publisher hasn't even pushed it to Amazon yet. So, I sent it to you because I wanted you to have it right away. But yes, definitely the audio version is coming probably within the next 30 days or so. So I
Awesome.
want to
I
make
can't
sure.
wait for that.
Yeah, it's cool. I love it these days because there's so many different ways to consume the same content. So I want to make sure that I cover the bases for everybody. So
Yeah,
yeah,
and I think
audio is
you can
coming.
connect so much more with
Yeah.
people when you're in their ear, right?
Yes.
I mean, this
Yes.
is the reason why we're doing this podcast. So,
Yep.
and you
Yep.
have a podcast yourself, so you totally
Yes.
get it.
Yeah.
Well, congratulations on your book. It's such
Thank
a
you.
huge achievement.
Yeah.
So I understand that you had kind of a ordinary life, you can say, up until
Sure.
you were 36 years old, right? You had
Yeah.
a family, a career, and
Yeah.
everything was going hunky-dory
Yeah. Everything was good.
until until you found yourself on the bedroom floor,
Yeah.
basically fighting for your life.
Yes. Yes.
So, and then what led in a series of events, kind of you realize that that's not how you want to live your life. And
Yeah.
that's what led you to finally write this book. So take us back to that night. What happened?
Sure. Yeah, it's definitely true. And I'm stealing your air quotes saying life was good. It really was. For me, the best way I can describe it, I was doing much better than I ever expected to be able to be doing in
Mhm.
life, just based on my upbringing. Not that I had a bad upbringing, I had phenomenal parents. We just didn't have much money to go around. So I never felt like I would be outside of that box of struggling for income and trying to figure out how to afford some of the luxuries that other people had. Um, but I wound up in a great career. I was a police officer since 1995 here in New Jersey, and
And thank you for your service and your sacrifice, by the way.
thank you so much. I really do appreciate that, and now I'm still there. I'm on my last year. I'm a captain now. I'm in charge of the whole patrol division. So that part of my life has improved, but I kept that career. What happened back then, this was 2009, the story you're describing. I was 36 and had just come home from work and went to sleep. Woke up at 1:30 in the morning, and I woke up and I had this massive pain in my chest. And I was confused because I was groggy and I was kind of coming out of my sleep days. And I had at the time been cross-trained as an emergency medical technician. So I
Mhm.
start self-diagnosing, like, wait a minute, what is going on here? And the pain was radiating down my arm. It was like a 12 on the 1 to 10 scale. And my wife was asleep next to me. Our daughter was 3 at the time, and she was
Oh, that
asleep in
must
her
have been so
room.
scary.
Yeah, she was asleep down the hall. And I remember standing up thinking, I got to walk this off. It was I know it seemed to make sense at the time. But I actually stood up and was like doing the old, you've seen the tough guys do it. We got to roll our shoulder and shake this thing off. I'm going to be fine. But what really struck me, like you just said, was knowing my daughter was down the hall and my wife was asleep, was the realization that if it actually was a heart attack and I didn't make it, she could walk down the hall in the morning and just find me. And that mental image freaked me out, and it prompted me to quickly realize I had to wake up my wife and have her call 911, which I did. And so I shook her. I said, baby, you got to wake up. I think I'm having a heart attack. And she, like in an instant, jumped out of her sleep, and her eyes got like saucers. And she said, oh my God, are you sure? And I
Oh
said,
my God.
yeah, both of us are trying to wake up still at this point. Like I said, it's 1:30 in the morning.
I'm like, babe, good, just go back to sleep.
Yeah,
What is
yeah.
happening?
So she called, and the minute she dialed on the phone, it felt like I had a big knob on my back that said energy, and it felt like somebody was turning my energy down. And I physically couldn't hold myself up anymore, and I collapsed at the foot of the bed.
Oh my gosh.
And I slumped down, and I couldn't move. I could hear as if I was underwater, like that muffled sound.
Mm-hmm.
And my vision narrowed down. It was like curtains were closing on a stage, and my vision just started getting narrower and narrower. And
What was going
mentally,
through your mind at that point?
yeah, what was interesting was, well, number one, I was trying to rationalize the moment, because all of this happened within a span of maybe 15 to 20 seconds from the time I woke up to the time I wound up collapsing. It was maybe 20 seconds, somewhere in that range. So I'm trying to process what's going on, because when I went to sleep, everything was just normal. And I started begging and realizing, oh my gosh, this can't be it. Like, I'm 36 years old. I'm healthy. I work out all the time. I eat much better than I did when I was in my 20s.
I mean, you're a police officer. You got to be in great shape.
Sure, I was doing the right things. But what struck me in hindsight, the most life-changing thing for me at that time was that I wasn't scared when that happened. I didn't feel a sensation of fear. I felt something different. What I felt was this massive pain of regret. Like, instantly, it was like a switch went on in my head, and I felt like I had this. It was like a Mack truck that hit me, and I felt this sadness that I had left so much undone. I realized that there was this void behind me of like missed opportunities.
Mm-hmm.
And my brain started rattling off, like, why wasn't I a better husband, a better father, a better friend, a better peer? Why wasn't I impacting more people? I felt like there was so much more I could have given to my life. And I suddenly felt completely selfish. And like I said, don't get me wrong, I was like a good guy. Like, we had great friends. The family was great. We had a great home that we lived in. Things were really good. But in that moment, I realized that I had just settled in and was just doing what everyone else was doing. And I was settling for what came to me naturally. So I allowed things to come to me. Whatever felt right, whatever conveniently fell in my lap, that's what I took. And fortunately for me at that point, it was some pretty good stuff had kind of fallen in my lap. But I had to be in those kind of moments. The one thing that happens is you get real honest. Like, the truth kind of exposes itself to you, and I realized you've been coasting. You haven't been trying to be anything more than you haven't been trying to be anything more than average. You just wanted to fit in. And I realized that's what I had been doing up till then. So made it to the hospital, spent a couple days in the hospital. They found out I did not have a heart attack. They think I had a mini stroke, because when the incident happened, I had like a facial droop on one side. And so I think they call it TIA. But fortunately, I've had no residual medical symptoms.
That's amazing.
Yeah, I've been good, but I knew at that point, something had changed, and things got very different for me. I realized things were going to change.
So do you think that somebody was upstairs looking out for you in that moment and they heard you, or like, why do you think you're able to kind of walk away from this unscratched, so to speak?
That is a great question. And the best way I can answer that, the best way I answer that question these days is to say, we can always search for, like, what do we think actually happened? Like, what was the meaning of this? Like, was somebody looking out? Was there a higher power looking out for me? Or was I just, lucky, for lack of a better word? But I think that the most important thing that I like to share with people when they have any moment, whether it's something like that or anything that kind of jars them, I like to say, we get to choose what it means. And for me, it meant I can do something different. I can add to what I've already been doing, and I can evolve more than I have. So I chose to give it the meaning of, you got a second opportunity, and you can choose what to do with it. And that's what I did. A lot of things changed after that for me.
What happened what happened since 2009?
The best way I can answer that, well, I did a few things. the most outwardly noticeable ones was I went back to school. I finished my undergrad and my graduate degree, went to University of Oklahoma, got my degree in leadership. And what really changed me more than my formal education was I started reading a lot of personal development books, books on human motivation, psychology, leadership theories, things of that nature. Because I wanted to figure out, my biggest question for me was I had to figure out why was it that really good people, because I know plenty of them, and I'm sure everybody listening does as well, why do really good people tend to settle into what they think they're allowed to have? Like, I am this, so I can only have these things.
Okay. So for those listening, it seems like a lot of books that I read, and similar to kind of your story, something drastic happens that jolts you out of it, right?
Yes.
Like it's usually some kind of a near-death experience that you're like, oh my gosh, I need to change.
Yes.
So if we're unlucky or lucky, I don't know, to not have a near life death experience, what is it that's going to jolt somebody else out of it?
I think it's the sharing. Like for me, when this happened, it's been almost a decade now, and for me, I feel I want to say obligated to share, but it's sort of has a negative connotation to it. I feel like I have the opportunity to share this. And what's changed for me more than my own story, what's really changed for me is reading all the things I've read and learning the things I've read from other people's perspectives and choosing to learn from their perspectives. Like the best way I can say that is my incident itself, like the fact that I had that physical event isn't necessarily what changed. What changed was that event prompted me to start learning from sort of opening my horizons and learning from other people's perspectives and stories. So it was just kind of the kick in the pants that said, hey, there's more to learn. And to your point, for you as you're listening now, you don't have to have that kind of experience to get the benefits from it. You can just say, okay, I heard Aaron talking about he had an experience that prompted him to start expanding his horizons and start challenging what he'd been doing. Everybody listening can start challenging themselves in the same way and say, okay, what is it I really want to do? What do I want to accomplish? If I lose the baggage and get myself out of this little box that we all wind up in, what is it that I really want to do? And what is it that I'm really trying to accomplish? And how can I get there?
Right. Hopefully, you don't have to learn from your own mistakes, so to speak. You learn from somebody else's experiences.
That's what us smart people do, isn't it? We learn from other people.
I don't know, most of us fall in that category, but we can all try, right?
Yes.
So Aaron, it sounds like you love to read, so I think we have that in common.
Yeah.
So what are, besides your own book, of course, what are your favorites? What are some of the books that you think are a must read for anyone, really?
I'm going to go back to my favorite book of last year was from Mel Robbins, The 5-Second Rule. And
5-second rule, you said?
Yes, The 5-Second Rule by Mel Robbins.
Okay.
That was one of my, that remains, will probably always be one of my top favorites because the concept of the book was so simple. And all the 5-second rule really is, and it's amazing still how she got 200 and something pages out of this concept, is that when you feel in your gut the urge to do something that you know you should do, and it's something that, when you feel that urge to do something, whether it's waking up in the morning or it's starting a business or it's making that call that you really don't want to make, if you will simply count down 5 seconds, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and then before you reach 0, physically move yourself in the direction of doing that thing, it creates a series of habits, and you will accomplish so much more than you ever thought you would accomplish. And here's why. The problem for most of us is we hesitate. Like if there's something that we know we need to do, whether it's go for the workout or, research the business plan or start the book or finish the book, whatever it is, most of us overanalyze. We just think ourselves into, we've all heard the term paralysis by analysis, but that is truly what most of us do. It's certainly what I had done for a long time. Even after my event, I started doing a lot more of the things that I was scared of doing, but I would overly analyze things. Her book really helped me just get things done a lot faster. And I've made so many great connections. I've met so many people. I've had so many more opportunities to grow and expand myself personally and professionally by losing that hesitation and just taking action. Within 5 seconds of me getting the idea, I just do it.
Yeah, they say done is better than perfect, right?
That is 100% the truth. Certainly is.
So since 2009, sounds like you kind of took the life by the horns, right?
Yes.
Literally. So you went back to school.
Sure.
You got promoted to a captain. Congratulations.
Yes. Thank you.
Right? You wrote a book.
Yes.
And you have a podcast out.
Yeah. So the rapid fire progression for me, probably the rawest way to put it is, I had the incident. I went back to school. I started reading a ton about the things I mentioned from so many great writers, everybody from Tony Robbins to Robin Sharma, Brendan Burchard, like all these great authors and people that I was learning from. Then I got the bright idea that I wanted to start my own website, because one of my favorite things I loved to do in my traditional career, my law enforcement career, was I love to teach. I spent 13 years teaching. And by far, to me, that was the most enjoyable thing for me, was teaching. And as I was learning these things that were drastically impacting my life at home and my life at work, I thought to myself, you have to start teaching this. Like, you have to share. So I started a website, started blogging, and then from blogging, it
What's the website?
Simply AaronKeithHawkins.com. It's my name.
Okay. So you guys make sure to check it out.
Yes, AaronKeithHawkins.com. And I started blogging, and after I started blogging, I realized I wanted to bring some voice into it. Like you mentioned, there's nothing like hearing somebody's voice. And that prompted the idea for the podcast, because I had started listening to many podcasts, and I loved them. And I realized I needed to start my own. And from there, after the podcast, I started coaching. And after coaching, I started speaking. So now I do keynote speaking as well. I created an online course that people could take. It's an 8-hour coaching program that I created. And then
what is the course about?
The course is called Unbreakable Success Academy. And the quickest way I can explain it is this. Most of us, I live under the assumption that most of us have good intentions, like in whatever it is we're looking to do, whether you want to be, whether you're selling houses or selling new homes, like much of your audience is, or whether you want to be a parent, or you want to be a spouse, you want a husband or wife. We usually start out with the best intentions in mind. What happens is, after we start, we get hit with a challenge, or one of many challenges. And usually those challenges have to do with our emotional challenges, our fears, our ability to influence, our ability to build relationships, the challenge of goal setting, the challenge of changing habits, because that's a big challenge for a lot of people is habit change, and having really a step-by-step system to get to where they want to get to. And what happens is, most of the time, those challenges cause people to either quit or just say, forget it, and whatever happens, we've all heard the term, it is what it is. My belief is that what changes things and what allows people to succeed, and from my research and the history, and I work with a ton of entrepreneurs and interview so many great entrepreneurs, people that are really making big changes in their own prospective industries, they tend to be prepared for these challenges ahead of time. One of my favorite quotes is from Tony Robbins, and he said, the problem for most people isn't that they have problems, they think they're not supposed to have any. So that when the problem hits them, they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe this bad thing happened. What changes things, what can change things for you as you're listening, is if expect that the challenges will come and be prepared for them. So the course, to answer your question about the course, it's designed, it's 8 modules that prepare people for those common challenges that I listed. So it's a coaching program that covers emotional resiliency, how to use fears as an actual asset instead of a burden, developing great relationships, developing influence, having a step-by-step process for making habit change and for goal attainment. And it makes it very tangible and simple to learn concepts about each one of those things, so that when you run into it in real life, you can go, yeah, I knew this was coming. I know how to deal with this.
Yeah, so I'm sure you draw a lot of that from your experience being a police officer, right? Because I'm sure day to day you have to kind of exhibit all of those, as well as influence. So with your book, so your book's called $1 Million Influence: How to Create Life-Changing Connection, Trust, an impact in your business and life.
Yes.
So talk to us a little bit about the concept of the book. Why did you decide to write this particular book on this topic?
Yeah, that's a great question. If a few months ago, the idea of this book didn't exist.
Mm-hmm. So this was literally, so how long did it take from start to finish?
The physical writing of the book to the first draft was about a week and a half.
Wow, that's incredible.
Yeah.
You guys, so if you want to write a book.
Well, the caveat to that is the preparation was probably about 5 years of preparation, not realizing that at the end of everything I was building, it was going to wind up in a book form. Mm-hmm. So it's, you know how it is, that every overnight success has about a decade of work behind it at least. Exactly. So yes, I physically, from the time I said, okay, let's get started writing, that only took a week and a half, but it took.
Because you already had all the concepts in your mind.
Yes. Okay. Yes. And I just broke it down and realized that this is something tangible I can create. But the book itself, I can best describe it by breaking it into 3 parts. First of all, well, let me explain the title first, because it's $1 Million Influence. I know it's catchy and people are like, ooh, what's that about? The title for the book came after me writing the book. Okay. And the reason I called it $1 Million Influence, it's a play on words for the phrase $1 Million Smile. And it's funny, as I was finishing the book, I happened to be watching TV and I'd been driving myself nuts trying to figure out, what do I want to call this book? Obviously I knew it was about influence, but I couldn't land on a title. And I heard somebody on the television saying something about somebody having $1 million smile. And that, for me, if you think of the expression $1 million smile, when you see one, you're drawn to it. Right. And you want more of it because it's so authentic, it's real, there's nothing fake about it, and it's just expressing true humanity is what $1 million smile is. That is the very explanation of how I feel about the right type of influence, and that's what I describe and lay out a framework for in the book. It's genuineness, it's authenticity, it's how do we behave and interact with people in a way that naturally makes them drawn to us, because it's so vulnerable, it's real, there's no hidden agendas, and it makes people feel safe. That's influence in a nutshell. Okay. So in your book, you talk a little bit about to understand influence, you need to understand people, right? And how they operate. So you talk about something, the trilogy of, what is it? Emotional human needs. Yes.
So what is this trilogy of human needs?
Sure. That's like I said, the book is broken up into 3 parts. So the first part is this trilogy, human needs, because we're going to have a harder time trying to influence people if we don't understand what pushes people's buttons in the first place. And then the second and third part of the book are the frameworks of influence itself. And then we really get into long-term, which is relationship building. But this trilogy of human needs is the idea that I studied a lot of people, a lot of researchers like Ryan and Deci and all these researchers that over the decades have put together these very long-term research projects about what makes people feel motivated to do something, what makes people feel fulfilled. A lot of people have heard of Abraham Maslow's hierarchy of needs. And what I did was I took every framework on human behavior I could find, and then I combined that with, throughout my career, I think I wound up with about 700,000 incidents that I could refer to during the course of my career where there's human interaction, everything from tragedies to heroism. And I laid out, I wanted to create a framework that really made it clear about what makes people tick. Why do we do the things we do? And the trilogy gives us 3 bubbles, if you will, of human behavior. People need 3 things. Number 1, people have the needs. People have what I call survival needs, like that will to survive, things that make them feel safe, like they're going to make it. The second is people need to feel self-aware, like they need to feel aware of themselves. They need to feel calm. They have things that are personally important to them, and then people have the need to transcend. I call them transcendent needs. And to break them down really fast, to keep it simple for people, survival needs there are three things in that bubble. So people need to feel, number one, they need to feel secure or safe. They need to feel connected or related to somebody, and they need to feel relevant. They need to feel like they matter. And this translates into business in this way. If you're interacting with a company, a business, and when you first interact with them, if you don't feel safe, if you feel like they have an agenda, you're out.
Right.
I mean, I hate to use it, and I apologize ahead of time to any car salesmen out there, but, historically, people feel, the old toothpick in the mouth, the 70s, Blazer, and hey, I got a great deal on this car, and there's like 3 wheels on the car.
You're dead on with that. I think people almost have a negative reaction to a word salesperson, right?
Yes.
So
even
the odds are already stacked against us because, it's like your visceral reaction is to like, I don't want to be sold. No, thank you.
Yep. So one of the best things we can do, and to try to make this conversation relevant to you and your audience as salespeople, we need to ask, how do we interact with somebody so that when they first come in contact with my business or what I have to offer, how do I take how do I help them take those walls down? And secondly, how do I make them feel, because the first need is security, the second need is relation, which is connection. They need to feel like a relationship with you. And then third thing is they need to feel relevance. They need to feel like they matter, not you matter. So if you're dealing with a customer that's potentially buying a home, number one, you got to make them feel safe. Like you're not going to convince them why they need to buy. You need to just interact with them at a human level, and you need to connect with them. And which the best way to do that is asking questions about them. Show interest in them. And if we can guide our conversations with people and remember that as long as we are interacting with people in a way that makes them feel like it's okay for us to have a conversation, and whatever happens afterwards is fine. But if nothing else, I want to meet you. I want to get to know who you are. I want to know what's important to you, whether you're buying this house or this product or not. I want to know what's important to you. I want to understand what makes you feel comfortable. What is it that you're looking to achieve, whether it's buying a home, buying a car, or buying a pair of shoes. And I want to let you know that whatever you do, it matters. Like you are doing the mere fact that you are shopping for a home, like you should be proud of that.
Right. And it's almost like you want your customer to spend more time talking than you talking, right? Because
Absolutely.
I see so many salespeople that are just doing this dump of information, right? Like this is energy efficient, yada, 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 yada. And they're talking the whole time as they go through the home instead of asking questions and letting the customer talk.
Yeah.
At the end of the day, who's having more fun? Is it the person who's talking or the person who is listening, right? So you want to let your customer talk, do most of the talking, right? It's my rule is always I try to do 90-10, and it's tough for sure. But you know, if they're talking and they're talking about themselves, they're talking about their kids, they're talking about their needs, they feel like they're being heard and they're connecting to you. Yeah,
it's almost the best way I can describe it. You almost need to err on the side of not even talking about what you're selling.
Right.
Because people don't buy products. They buy the person or the entity that has the product. And they're either going to feel like that entity satisfies their survival needs, and makes them feel safe and secure and connected and makes them feel like they matter, or not. And if those needs aren't hit on, if you are not intentionally, and I don't mean this as I need to preface this by saying these aren't manipulative tactics. This needs to be like who you are. You genuinely want people that come into contact with you and your business. You want them to know that they are safe with you, and you do feel like they matter, and you do want to connect with them, and you actually like getting to know people. And getting to know, like, what's going on with you right now. That's, what's got you looking for a house, and what is your perfect ideal situation. And, you know, what are you looking for? Where have you come from? What interests you? What's important to you guys? What do you guys like to do? What do you do on weekends? What do you do, you know,
Yeah,
during
because
the
at the
week?
end of the day, people buy from people they like.
Yeah, if
Right?
they don't like you,
The
and
connection beyond. And
yeah,
so many times I know I've had a customer who walked in through the doors and they had kind of like their, back up. I'm not here to buy a house. I'm just
yeah,
looking for decorating ideas, whatever. And I immediately go into no problem. Let me take you through. Let me show you.
yeah,
I make them feel at ease. And then you know what? They end up
yeah.
buying a house.
They need to feel like you're their guardian,
Yep.
like you're their protector. And that's why like these are called survival needs. And how do people survive? Well, they survive when people survive by being protected. And if
Mm-hmm.
you if you got to get rid of the term salesperson, you're just a provider. You're a catalyst to them getting what they want. You're not
An
there to sell
advisor.
them on anything. You're an advisor. Yeah, you're the catalyst. You're the resource. You're the helper, and you're the protector to make sure that as they're browsing or looking around for a place to live, you're the one that's going to keep them safe along the way. And you're the
Mm-hmm.
one that cares about them enough to make sure that process is meeting every single need that you can come up. And that's just the first circle of human needs. And if you think about it, that those survival needs, that's where most people live. Like most of us, just taking sales and business out of it on a day-to-day basis, most people will beg, borrow, and steal to feel safe. Like the things that keep them calm are
Mm-hmm.
their routines, and their TV show better not be canceled.
Yeah.
And
At the end of the day, our brains are still very primitive.
yes, we're
We
very
still go
primitive.
back to the caveman,
Yeah.
like
Yep.
were our basic needs. And a
Yes.
lot of our psychology,
It's
you
still
think as
there.
far as we've come, but it still is very much tied to that.
Food, water, shelter. We're still very
Exactly.
much there. So all of us, we fight for the need for security and the need to feel connected, which is why people freak out when the relationships fall apart. And people need to feel relevant. That's why we dress nice and we look for nice cars and we want the beautiful house, because it makes us feel special. Either special because we have those things, or special because we want to provide those things for our family and our loved ones. And these are not negatives. These are good things to have, but they are part of our needs. And as business people, we have a responsibility to be aware of what those needs are,
Mm-hmm.
because that's what helps us make intelligent decisions and realize who we actually need to be if we're going to be successful at providing these products and services to our customers.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, go ahead. I'm sorry.
And I was going to say, and I think it's very important in sales. And if you think about the sales cycle for a new home, it's that much more important to understand those
Sure.
needs, right? Because
Sure.
as a new construction sales reps, we're in it for a long, long time, right? It's
Yeah.
not a short transaction where somebody's coming in, they see a car, they buy a car.
Yeah.
Oftentimes we're selling from blueprints. You
Mm-hmm.
can't physically touch that product. It may be different from a model home, even if you have a model home. And from start to finish, it's going to be, a 6-month period, give or take.
Yeah.
So you have to be able to maintain that relationship for
Yeah.
a long period of time. And you have to have a good enough relationship that when things go wrong, which they always do,
Mm-hmm.
right? Construction is always unpredictable. There's
Yes.
delays. There's, oops, we put a fireplace in the wrong location or whatever else happens.
Yeah.
You have to be able to come to your customers and say, hey, Mr.
Sure.
and Mrs. Customer, this is what happened. And this is what we're going to do to fix it. So
Yeah.
if your customers already have a distrust
Mm-hmm.
and, they think you're out to get them,
Yeah.
it's only going to go down the hill from there.
Yeah.
So what can we do? Maybe like 2 or 3 things that we can do to help us build those relationships with people?
Sure. Well, this is where we have the opportunity to make things better, because we touched on survival needs. That's the minimum of what we need to have in our mind when we
Mm-hmm.
interact with people. The second in that trilogy of needs is our self-awareness needs. And we need to remember that that's what our customers have. And those self-awareness needs include 3 things. That's need for autonomy, meaning the need to realize, or at least feel like they can do it on their own. To use an analogy, if you picture little kids learning to tie their shoes for the first time and you're trying to help them a little too much and they're saying, no, leave me alone, I can do it by myself. people need to feel that. So in this home buying experience, they need to feel like their need for autonomy is being satisfied, their need for calm, which is a big one, especially when you're talking about a 6-month process of buying a home, because a lot of things are going to come along and make them not feel calm.
Absolutely.
And they feel the third and final thing in the self-awareness needs is the need for to feel novelty, which is like the need for something that's different, that's special. Think of it as like a movie sequel. People always want that little bit of thing that's different, new, unique to them. And when it comes to a process, especially buying, selling homes like we're discussing here, we need to be thinking, okay, how can I communicate with my customer and make sure they feel like they can handle this process and not feel like they're being pushed into a situation where they feel like they need me or they need to let us take it over. How can we communicate with them and say, look, I understand this is a long process and it may feel complicated and things are going to be happening, but you can get through this. Like we're here to help you through this process, but you can figure this out alone. I know it can feel like it can be overwhelming and stressful, but so many people have gotten through this process, and you're certainly capable of getting through this. And we're going to be here to help you along the way and make sure at the end of the day, it gets done right. And we're going to do it in a way that is special and just for you, because this home is yours. This is nobody else's home. Like this process is unique to you. And we need to remember the end game, that you're creating something special for yourself, for your family. And when this is all said and done, we want you to be able to look back over your shoulder and say, you know what, as crazy as that process was, it was pretty cool. And you know what, we did get it done. And that's the feeling that, that's the feeling that you want your customers to have, that, you know what, they can figure it out and they can breathe and remain calm. And you can have those conversations with them about sports or about fashion or about movies to get their mind off of the nuts and bolts of the process. We need to be aware enough to give them a break, not to disconnect from them, but to connect with them in a way that takes their mind off of it for a minute. So they feel like they're just having another human help them through the process and not another salesman trying to push them through the process. And there's a big difference there. So those are those 3 things, giving them the feeling of autonomy, calm, and some novelty, to realize that their situation and their home it's special, it's unique to them. And whatever you can do to provide them an experience that's different from everything else, and those little things make a big difference.
I'll tell you what, if you ever want a second career in new home sales, you're hired. that was excellent. So
thank you.
And in your book, you talk about some of the mistakes that people make that would prevent them from creating an influence on someone. Right?
Yeah.
So what are some of those mistakes that you see people make?
The first and biggest mistake, and it's funny, I had a live stream this morning. I was just talking about this. It's funny, that's why I'm giggling that you just asked. The biggest mistake that people make is not paying attention. It's inattention. A lot of people traditionally think of influence as like this thing that needs to be turned on or turned off depending on the situation. But the truth is, from the onset of the relationship, the minute you meet with someone, your influence has started right there, and you can't turn it off. From that point forward, you're always influencing them. And I literally mean you can't turn it off. Even if you stop communicating with them, that is influencing them.
Right. So it's just going to be, which way are you influencing?
Yes. The lack of it, like people say, well, I'm not always influencing because I'm not always around. Exactly. So even the manner in which you are around is influencing them when it comes to you and your business and what you're looking to accomplish. So I'm talking from the way you dress, the way you speak with them, the way you present your materials to them, how many times you're calling them, how fast you respond to their calls or their emails, how you speak with their family, how you look at their husband or wife. Every single thing you do is telling the story of you. And in a bigger picture, when it comes to business, you're telling the picture of the culture of the organization that you're working with and working for. And we have an obligation to recognize that influence is happening 24/7. And it may feel like, to some people, I know that may feel like a burden, like, oh my God, this is like, but it's not a burden. It's an opportunity, because it allows you, it puts you in the driver's seat to say, however they feel about you and your company and your product, we never have complete control, but we always have a massive amount of influence. Always.
And, you know, it's so interesting when you talk about this. So sometimes, I mean, I've seen, you know, a customer come through the door and sales reps just sitting behind their desk, and maybe they're busy doing something. They don't even get up, and they're like, okay, well, just go through the model and, you know, I'll catch up with you. And it's like, you know, how it's almost like, okay, if you just stand up and greet them at the door, that already sets such a different precedent for their experience. And one thing I find that's really helpful for me is I assume the sale. Like, I assume that every single person that's coming through the door, they're there to buy a house from me, and they're going to buy a house from me. And that already in my mind sets it up that I treat them special. I don't treat them as just, oh, they're just looking, they're a waste of my time. And when you think somebody's waste of your time, that's how you're going to treat them, as they're wasting your time. And of course, they're not going to buy a house from you.
That
So
is,
I think it's what we can do to position ourselves to influence someone, if we already have it in our head that they are our buyer and I'm going to treat them as such.
That is one of the biggest advantages that we all have, is to tell our own story. Like in your case, you just said, like, you assume that they're gonna, you just like, the sale is made. So that puts you in this mindset, like, wow, I have the opportunity to guide this person into their new home, and that's so awesome. I was talking the other day about, we took a vacation to St. Lucia a couple of years ago, and the place we stayed, it was one of those moments where it was just so viscerally eye-opening when it comes to how to do it right. Because everywhere we went, people knew our names. People were like, I would be walking down like this, it was like a little main street on the resort, and I would hear like some of the people that were just workers there, and they would yell to me, like, Aaron, what's up, buddy? How you doing, man? And they would just, but it was so genuine. And how many hundreds and thousands of people came through this resort on a regular basis? Like, I wasn't the only person there. We didn't rent out the whole place, but they made it it was their culture to make it a point that the people that they see were absolutely gold. And the great thing about that, what makes it such a huge advantage when it comes to working in a business where sales is part of what you do, it becomes so easy when we realize most people won't do this stuff. Most people don't care in big picture. Like most, it's sad, but it's true. You know that most people, when it comes to learning these things and learning what really matters to people and learning how important it is to make people feel a certain way, most people either don't know, or they just won't bother to learn. And it puts people like you and I, and the people that are listening, anybody, if you're listening to the show, you're already on the right path, because you're somebody who wants to grow and progress and get better at what it is you do. And you want to serve yourself and your industry and your clients better. That's why you're here in the first place. So you are already at such a distinct advantage. You're in that little like 3% of people that are in the right place. So, and
I always say, like, you know, why did you even bother come to work today? Like, why didn't you just stay home? If you're going to have that attitude, like, just stay home.
And it's
if you're going to
so
be
much
at work
easier.
Already, you're committed to those hours, so you might as well kill it, right? You might as well put your 150% or whatever you got out there, since you already have to be here.
And what makes it so easy is when you decide that this isn't what I need to do. This is like when you decide it's a sense of identity. Not an obligation, like, oh, I got to remember to do these things. That when you learn this stuff and make it a part of, and you look at it and say, okay, this is not what I need to do. This is who I am. This is me representing my personal brand of me and how I present myself to the people that I have the opportunity to work with. Nobody will be able to touch you when it comes to the reputation and the culture that you create where you work, because it sets you apart. It's unignorable. Like I just talked about that vacation. That was a few years ago, and I still remember the guy's. One of the guys' names was Kirby. He used to scream. He was so loud. And some guy all the way on the other side of in the Caribbean Ocean, and I remember him because of how he made me feel every single time I walked past him.
Mm-hmm.
I can't tell you how many people that I've told about this resort because I've been there, or because of the experience that I had when I was there. So this stuff matters. It makes a huge, huge difference.
Yeah.
Huge difference.
And it's like, no matter what builder you work for, remember that you are the CEO, right? Because you are the CEO of you. You are the CEO of how you represent yourself, how you make people feel. And at the end of the day, it could be the greatest builder in the world, but if you were not representing those values, those feelings, you're not communicating that feeling to the customer, they're not going to buy from you. And it could be the opposite, right? It could be the unknown builder that nobody's ever heard of, but it's how you made them feel, that they feel so comfortable, that they trust you and they want you to be there to guide them. So just remember, that makes such a big difference.
It does. Absolutely. Remembering to get back to what we were talking about with, as far as some of the keys that we can use, and some of the common mistakes when it comes to influence, is that one, that paying attention to the fact that it's always happening. And the second thing I wanted to mention is the second and third. I'll throw them both in there at the same time for the sake of time. Generosity. A lack of generosity is one of the biggest mistakes when it comes to being influential, especially in business. And boundaries. I'll touch on generosity first. In the fact that we are where we are historically in 2018, everyone, and I mean this in a good way, there's a certain sense of entitlement. People expect more. People expect more information. People expect to be given information freely. And one of the best things we can do in business is kind of take down the barriers and make generosity part of the process. And obviously with homes, you can't give a sample home to people, but you can think of some innovative ways to be more generous with your clientele. And it can be big things, it can be small things. And part of generosity can simply be what we discussed earlier, making people feel safe and secure and connected to you, and helping them feel calm. I
can think of a perfect example, actually, what you're talking about. With a lot of home builders, they don't like to give out the option list to the customer. So I could never understand that. Like it makes the customer feel like, why can't I see this option list, right? If I'm going to buy this house, like why, it's almost like a sense of a control that the builder wants to exhibit over the buyer, that I'm going to sit here with you, I'm going to go through it because it's way too confusing. So one of the things I do is I give it, I say, hey, this, I share it. I make it very transparent. So they feel like there's no barrier. It's 100% open process, right? So they know exactly what's happening and they feel control. Because I'm not making it difficult for them. So in that sense, I feel like that's a generosity, because you are giving them all the resources, all the information, and it's free information, so to speak. You're sharing it freely with them, and they feel much more comfortable,
empowered. And that generosity is a perfect example of allowing them to feel secure. They feel safe with you. Because, okay, this person, she's not holding anything back from me. She's helping me out. She's giving me this. They feel more connected with you. They obviously feel like they matter. So you just hit on all three of the survival needs just by that one act. You're also giving them a sense of autonomy, because now they get to look at the list of options. They get to feel empowered, that they can make decisions based on what's there, what they're seeing, what do they want, what do they not want. And that's exactly what I was talking about, where they now feel autonomous, they feel a little bit more calm, and they feel a sense of novelty. You just covered the first 6 needs
Go
that we're
me.
talking about, go you, just by doing that, because
Right.
there's something cool about having choices. That's a novel feeling, like, oh, this would be cool. What do you think about this? And that act creates connection amongst the family members that are actually in the process of looking for their new homes. And now you're opening up an opportunity for a husband and wife and their kids to sit at a table potentially and have, the husband and wife can share, the partners can share a glass of wine, and the kids can be part of the process. You're creating a situation where there can be a memorable experience for someone just because you decided to be generous.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the cool things about this process, and one of the reasons I love teaching about influence, because yes, it benefits us as the reader and the people that are consuming this information. We're getting benefits from it,
Mm-hmm.
but we don't realize most of the time the ripple effect that it has, the positive ripple effect that our awareness and our desire to be better influencers, it creates an influence beyond us. Like we'll never know the situations that we create in a good way, because we bother to engage in this stuff. And that's a really cool thing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think it also goes back to like making it very easy.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like it's the same thing of generosity, because,
Yeah.
we've all seen, we've sat down with that car salesman and then they go over that paperwork, and
Yeah.
then you see some crazy stuff in there that you never discussed.
Yeah.
It's like, whoa, wait a minute. So I think part of that generosity is making it a very simple process, so
Mm-hmm.
that the consumer feels like, hey, I can do this. You're here to guide me and you're here to make it easy. And it doesn't have to be this complicated process, because let's face it, home buying, especially new construction, is a very complicated process. But if you can make it uncomplicated, that's going to really make a big difference there.
That you lead perfectly into that third mistake that most people make. I mentioned boundaries.
Mm-hmm.
And if we don't have a sense of boundaries about what we're willing and not willing to do, that's a problem. And that's a perfect example of what you're talking about, the old cliche, the car buying experience, where you go to sign the paperwork and all of a sudden there's like, a few $100 thrown in there for something you don't even know what it is. But boundaries, for the best way I can explain boundaries, is to think of it in terms of values. Like, what are your values? Like, if your values are when it comes to how you operate as a person, never mind as a business, if your values are things like empathy and honesty, mm-hmm. and trust and relationships and connection, if we don't set a boundary around what we do and say, I'm only going to operate within my value system, that sets up the framework for consistency and authenticity. Because if our values are honesty, there's no way you would ever consider trying to sneak something in on a customer. If your values are generosity, there's no way you're going to hold back information from a customer that can help them make their buying decision. Mm-hmm. The two just don't match. So when I say boundaries, I don't mean boundaries as in building walls. I mean boundaries as in like taking some of those walls down and just making sure what you're doing is value consistent, and like it speaks to your character. And when we can operate in business in alignment with our character as individuals, like who we aspire to be, mm-hmm. and don't deviate from that, it makes it so much easier, because then all you have to do to be successful is to just be who you are.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, if you're, I always think like, oh my gosh, if you're lying, it's just you have to keep up with so many stories and
sure, yeah.
try to figure it all out. So who can do that? So yeah, absolutely. You're right about that.
Yeah.
Now, you guys, what I love about Aaron's book is that it is broken into parts, and literally it's mm-hmm. like step 1, step 2, step 3. Here are the 7 pillars. So even for somebody who is not a book reader, so to speak, again, going back to the audio, it actually makes it a very easy read, just because, you can literally read between kids taking a nap after dinner, chapter here, chapter there. So it makes it for a very, very easy read. So I appreciate that.
Thank you.
am looking forward to the audio version for sure. Let me know when it's available. I'll be the first one to download that.
Thank you.
And Aaron, where can we find your book? If, it's a great read, so I would recommend everyone go out there and get a copy. Where can we get that?
Sure. Very easy. If you just go to my website, it's aaronkeithhawkins.com. It's AARON, Keith, Keith, Hawkins, HAWKINS.com. And right on the front page, the book is there, and there's a nice big red button where you can click and you can download the book for free. I give away a digital copy to anybody that wants it. No barriers. Just take it, enjoy the content, and would love to hear everyone's feedback. There's an option afterwards if you want to get a physical copy. You just pay for shipping to get it. But at a minimum, I want everybody listening to be able to have this as a resource. So like you said, even if you just scan the table of contents and say, okay, let me pick and choose what I want to grab out of here today. And thank you for acknowledging it's great to hear feedback, because you know how it is when you create something.
Absolutely.
You know what your intention was.
It's a scary thing to put yourself out there. I'm sure it's like your baby,
Yeah.
It's like, what?
Yeah.
But yeah, you guys, it's such an easy read. And I love that it's boom, 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 section 1, section 2, section 3. Makes it super easy, and I think very actionable. You can really apply it by section and say, okay, what am I doing wrong maybe, or let me take this lesson and apply it today and see if it makes a difference in my customer interaction. So I appreciate you giving us a free copy. It's huge. I hope you guys all go and download it. I'll be sure to include a link in the show notes as well, so everyone can get their copy. And Aaron, where do you hang out online? Where can we connect with you? What's the best?
You can find me on LinkedIn. Just type in Aaron Keith Hawkins. I'm easy to find there. You can find me on Instagram. It's just Aaron Keith Hawkins on Instagram, and all the social sites. If you go to my website, if you go to aaronkeithhawkins.com, I got all my social links at the top for Instagram, Facebook, Twitter. Most of the time, if there was one biggest one, it's usually Instagram, because I do a lot of lives there, and I do Facebook lives as well. So Aaron Keith Hawkins fan is my Facebook page, and I'm happy to connect. And on my website, there's a phone number at the top of my website. If anybody has questions or just wants to talk, you can text me or call me at that number on my website, and I always respond. I'm happy to help as much as I can.
Awesome, you guys. And if you're listening to this, you know that there's somebody in your life who can use this book. So please share it with them. Let's help Aaron spread the word out and make it #1 seller, right?
Thank you so much. I appreciate you.
I appreciate your taking the time to connect with me this morning. It was a pleasure. And I wish you best of luck in your journey with this book. I definitely want to hear an update as you progress to see what more you accomplish, because I'm sure you're going to accomplish a lot in this lifetime. So
I appreciate it. Thank you so much. And thank you for listening, everyone. I appreciate you for being here.
Thank you. Talk to you soon.
Okay.